So I'm Michael Slosky. I lead product management for apps and games on Google Play. And along with Ellie Powers, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about building better, about how to create great quality user experiences in your apps. So look, as you guys know, quality is the foundation of a successful mobile app business. Users expect quality, and it's not enough in today's mobile app world just to get people to install your app, right? You've got to create features, create user experiences that get them coming back again and again and again. You've got to get them to go tell their friends about your app. You've got to get them to want to spend money in your app. And we know, and we've seen consistently over the years, that the higher the quality of the user experience in your app, the more money users spend. The better your star rating on the Google Play Store, the more money you make. So it's really worth you guys investing your precious time and energy in understanding what users love about your apps, what issues they have in your apps, in going out and proactively managing user feedback. And if you do that, that investment will pay off for you guys in the long term on your business bottom line. So there's a lot of different types of app quality, right? But what we see is, as we look at the apps that are most successful in Google Play, there are four main aspects to what they do in the quality of their user experience. First, they solve real user needs with features that users love. Second, they have not only a beautiful design, but their apps are easy to use and are a joy to use. Third, they're reliable. They don't crash, but they're not data hogs, and they're not battery hogs either. And fourth, they innovate. They stand out from the crowd by building on top of the latest Android features. So we think about applying these across the entire range of an app lifecycle, from design to development to distribution. And to tell you about how you guys can apply those four aspects of app quality across the lifecycle of your app, I'm going to invite up our product manager for developers, the one and only Ellie Powers.
Thanks, Michael. Hi, everybody. So, as Michael mentioned, we're going to go through each of these three different phases and talk all about how to improve quality. So, let's get started with design. Does anyone remember last year's talk about material design? So this year, if you don't remember it, or you weren't here, we're going to do a quick refresher. Then we're going to see what developers like you are already doing with material design, and we're going to share a couple of updates about what's new in the material design world. So, material design is a design system that's about governing how a UI should move, feel, and adapt to a user's touch. If you want to learn more, check out developer.android.com/design. It's a great first starting point. And material design has four principles. So the first one is tangible surfaces. The whole idea here is that the way an app works should be basically the same as if that app was made out of real physical objects in the real world. The second one is print-like design. The content should be bold, graphic, and very intentional. You can use the material design look and refine it to refit and reflect your app's brand. And third, meaningful motion. You can use motion in your app to focus the user's attention and to give continuity as a user moves from one screen to another in your app. And fourth, adaptive design. The whole point here is that you can create a layout that'll feel familiar whether a user accesses your app on a phone, a tablet, a TV, Android Wear, or even an Android Auto car. The user shouldn't have to relearn the design of your app every time they move to a new device category. So we're going to watch a little animation now and see if you can spot these four principles as we go through it. So over the past year and a half, we've seen a huge amount of creativity from Android developers just like you as they start using material design to make their apps more beautiful and also easier to use. And if you're interested, you can go to this URL here to check out some of the best apps using material design and get inspiration for your own apps. So let's talk about one app in particular that's had some huge success coming from material design. So here's Trello. They're an app that allows you to keep track of your biggest projects, and they're super useful when you're working with a big team and you found out that long email threads and out-of-date spreadsheets are not working for you. So Trello used material design as a big part of an investment that they made in revamping their Android app. And their mobile lead said that the focus on simplicity was a big part of this material design refresh. And material design doesn't just look good, it also brought big results for Trello. You can see here that there was a 10% increase in the number of sessions per user per week, 42% more boards created for each user session, and 63% more people added boards in every session. So we think this happened because the material design refresh helped simplify tasks in the app and also improve feature discoverability. And users said that the UI was a lot more fun and engaging to use as well. So last year, we heard from developers, hey, material design looks really fun and cool and great, but you know what? I'm gonna need a lot more resources to make it easier for me to make my design work well in the material design. And we totally heard you, we totally get that. So this year, we've introduced some new resources here on the left, which I'm gonna go through today. And we've also expanded the material design spec to include a whole bunch of cool new widgets, layouts, etc., which are listed on the right. I highly recommend that you go check them out online. So, if you haven't been to design.google.com yet, you should definitely check it out. This is Google's first website that's completely dedicated to every aspect of design at Google. And you can see everything that I'm talking about today on that website. You can see what's new in material design, get detailed guidelines, and even find sample code. We wanted to make designers' lives easier, and generating icons used to take a lot of time. But now we're offering a big new library of material design optimized icons, and this is a great place to get started for your app. Another benefit of using icons from this new library is that users may already recognize these icons from other apps, making discoverability easier for you. We also heard from a lot of developers that they wanted to get detailed design specs on the wide range of Android devices that are available. So this new devices tool gives you a lot of information that you've been missing, even including the recommended material design guidelines for each device. Now, I think the biggest request I heard last year was, wouldn't it be great if you could just provide a lot of reusable libraries for these material design components so that each team building their app doesn't have to build the same stuff again and again from scratch? And we totally agree. We don't want anyone here to have to build the same stuff from scratch, so we've created these new support libraries. The easiest way to use them is the Android Studio SDK Manager, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And if you want to get a look at all of the old and new patterns available in these support libraries, which are backwards compatible with older devices, you can go to google.com/design/spec. And this has screenshots, tips, and a bunch more information. And if you're looking for a whole overview and an easy way to get started, we have a new course on Udacity. It's called Android Design for Developers, and it'll walk you through everything you need to know about material design so you're ready to go and write code effectively and create beautiful, beautiful layouts and get the most out of material design. Okay, so that was design. Now we're going to move on and talk about development. So, of course, the big news this year is Android Marshmallow. It's cute, it's huggable, it's sweet. This latest Android release also brings big changes to developers, and I want to highlight the two most important changes today. The first one is the new runtime permissions model, and also the second one is some new features that help save power on users' devices. So let's talk about permissions. If you want to use any of the Android Marshmallow APIs, that is API 23, you'll need to transition your app to use this new runtime permissions model. And runtime permissions are great because they give users more control over their private information. We actually heard some people wanting this last year at Playtime EMEA. And they're also great for developers because they can help improve your app's install and update rates too. So, does everyone recognize this flow from the version of Android that we use today? So, when you're installing an app, users have to accept all the permissions. What happens on screen number 2 can be a little scary for some people. It's like a big roadblock, right? So this is what a user on Lollipop sees. And you can see in the second screen, they have to agree to everything. And if there's even one piece of information here that they aren't comfortable sharing, the only thing that they can do about it is cancel the install and go find a different app that doesn't have that permission. Not ideal. So with Marshmallow, we made that scary dialog box unnecessary so that the user can just install the app straight away. They won't have to agree to any permissions when they install the app. And when they launch the app for the first time, they can access permissions as needed, and the app will just show prompts to them which they can accept as they need. So this is what it looks like when a user runs the app for the first time. These are what the prompts look like. And then the user can, as you would expect, click allow or deny. And here's an important detail. The first time the permission is requested, the user might click deny, right? It could happen. And that could be because the user doesn't understand, or maybe they're just on the run and they didn't really read the screen. And the first time that deny happens, it's really not a big deal for you. You can just, have the app request the permission again later. And the second time that deny happens, that dialog happens, you'll get that do not ask again option that you can see there. And you have to be a little bit careful because if the user checks this checkbox, they won't be prompted again, and instead they're going to need to go to settings if they want to enable that permission later. So speaking of settings, this is really important here. Any user on Android Marshmallow can go to the settings page to enable or disable permissions for any app on a Marshmallow device. And that includes even apps that have not been updated to that new runtime permissions model. So if they go to one of those non-updated apps and they disable a certain permission, they will see a warning, but then after that, your app may run in some unexpected ways. And this can be confusing to users. So we highly recommend that in order to make sure that your app runs in a very predictable and organized fashion on Marshmallow devices, that you go and move to the runtime permissions model as soon as you can. And here's another benefit. It used to be, has anyone run into this? You add a new permission to your app, and then the update rate is just not moving as smoothly as it used to. Well, we've definitely been aware of that too. So we've decided that in the new runtime permissions model, since again the user has to agree to each permission individually at runtime, those app updates will keep flowing through without any sort of block. So now we're going to talk about when you're moving to the new permissions model, how should you think about the user experience? You're going to be seeing these prompts for users, but there's good ways to do it and not so good ways to do it. Users are definitely more likely to agree to permissions when they understand why those permissions are being used. So we're going to walk through 4 different ways that you can introduce permissions prompts into your app so that users' expectations are met. So the first one, some apps have a tutorial at the beginning, and they'll explain the major functions of the app. And this can be a great place to include information about why important permissions are going to be requested so that then later in the tutorial when you request those permissions, the user won't be surprised because they understand the context of your app a bit better, even though they haven't used it before. Now, if your app is doing something so obvious, like a messaging app asking for an SMS permission, it might be okay just to prompt immediately on the first run of the app. But this can be a dangerous game because if you think it's obvious and the user doesn't, now you have a messaging app that can't send SMSs, and that's probably not great. So you have to be very sure that it's very, very clear to users. Otherwise, consider the tutorial. So that was about asking when the user first launches the app. But in many cases, apps only need a certain permission when they're using particular features. So now let's talk about that. So the first time that a user uses one of those features that requires a permission, like in this case, requesting the microphone permission to record a voice note, it makes sense to prompt the user right when they take that action, and not before. And so users, for example, who are not taking voice notes never need to see this dialogue, never need the microphone permission. But if they are going to do that, then you can just request it right there, and it's very clear to the user what's happened. Now, in other cases, the user will need to understand a little bit more and get more education about how a feature will work before you can prompt them. So in this case here, we're giving a little bit more education about what the feature can do, and then the user can either say try it or no thanks. If they decide to try it, they would then get a permissions prompt after they get some background on what the feature would do. So even if you think you've done a great job of explaining why a particular permission is needed and putting it in context, the user might still click deny. Now, if this is the case, you want to make it clear to your user inside your app why certain parts of the app may not be functioning correctly, and then provide a link to settings so that they can enable the permission. In this case, the app is using a material design snack bar to do this, right at the bottom, and this is a nice metaphor. So this can be a good time also to reconsider whether Android intents might be a better way to go about doing it. In many cases, you may be able to use an intent instead of a permission, and that can be much more user-friendly. So to summarize, here are all the benefits of updating your app to use Android Marshmallow's runtime permissions flow. So next, we're going to talk about some of my favorite Marshmallow features. They help save users' battery life, which we all know is really important. And as a developer, you want to make sure that your app works really well with these new features. So first, let's talk about doze mode. Let's say you've left your phone or tablet sitting on the living room. It's not plugged in. You go to sleep. You come back in the morning. You want your phone or tablet to still be alive and not run out of battery. And that will happen in Marshmallow because Marshmallow detects that that device has basically gone idle, and your device basically takes a nap. So when your app is in doze mode, these are the functions that are restricted. And other times, it may actually be that the whole device is still being used, but actually just your one app that's not in use. And in that case, each app that's unused will go into standby mode, and that means that that app will conserve battery life. These are the criteria that Android will use to decide if that app is not being used. And when an app is in standby mode, these are the sorts of things that get affected. So basically, the most important thing that you can do here as a developer is to run certain commands using ADB to basically simulate these conditions on devices and to test and see if your app still works as it's intended. If you really need to deliver certain messages and get through with high urgency, we offer a special GCM API that allows you to send high priority messages. So definitely give this one a test. Next, we're going to talk about Android Studio. So is anyone here using Android Studio already? Yeah, maybe some people? Cool. So we're going to take a look at some recently launched features. Okay, there we go. So we announced Android Studio back in 2013, and so this is basically Google's official IDE. And if you're still on Eclipse, please do note that it will be fully deprecated by the end of the year, so this is a good time to think about moving over. So here's what's new. Most apps don't need C++ code, but certain apps that have high requirements for CPU, like game engines, signal processing, and physics simulations, will need to use it. And so if your app does have one of these special needs, you'll be happy to know that Android Studio now allows you to have C++ code and Java code live happily ever after in one project. And users love apps that are fast, that are responsive, and don't waste resources on their device. So Android Studio provides 3 types of tools that will help you get ahead of the curve here. First, you can visualize resource use in your app. Second, you can identify wasteful data structures. And then finally, you can understand the burden that your app puts on users' data plans and pinpoint where to reduce usage. So at the core of Android's strategy is our unified build system. We've made a lot of performance improvements to it lately. If you like creating UI in a visual way, we have some new tools that allow you to drag and drop components and manage your assets more efficiently. And then earlier we mentioned how Android Studio can really help you with material design. This is the best place to use the design support library. And you can just basically drag and drop cool material design widgets into your app using Android Studio, and they're backwards compatible back to Android 2.2. So in addition to the Android Design Library, we have a bunch of other libraries that you can go learn more about online. They can be super helpful to speed up development. And then finally, Android Studio also makes it easier to bring your apps to new device types. You can create a new Android Wear face quickly or even simulate an Android Auto app. So finally, we're going to talk about distributing your apps to users and building your business. So Google Play is all about matching your app with the right users who really want it. And we also provide some great tools to help you improve quality. But I want to start out with some really good news. So today, maximum APK size is 50 megs, right? So this is, 50 megs. Anyone have an app almost 50 megs? Maybe flirting with 50, 49? So when that happens, if someone tries to install a larger one, you get this warning, right? Has anyone seen that warning and you get a little bit worried and maybe you click back? Or you have to set up APK expansion files, which definitely takes some time. So we have some good news. To be announced later today, 100 megabytes. We're really excited too. We've been working on this for quite a while. It takes us a good bit of testing because we have to work with such a range of devices and operators. But we wanted all of you to be the first to know. We'll have an announcement going out on our blog later today. We just wanted you to know one thing. Even though will allow APKs up to 100, users still really do like the smaller APKs, so only go over 50 if you absolutely must. So now we're going to talk a little bit more about how to use iteration on Google Play to test new ideas. So we offer a whole bunch of special tools, which Mark touched on earlier, to help you get early feedback. And we recommend these as best practices to every single developer. Our best developers, most successful developers use these tools, and if you aren't already, you're definitely missing on a big opportunity to have a high-quality app. So, anyone here using beta testing? Fantastic. I love seeing those hands. This is a really special feature on Google Play, and you can distribute your app to a subset of users, and you can get feedback early rather than releasing it to everyone and just crossing your fingers saying, please work. So with beta testing, users opt in, and they can't leave reviews, and it's pretty cool. You should definitely try it if you haven't. And developers have told us beta testing is great, but we want more ways to be able to make it easy for users to join. So this year we announced 2 changes. The first one was open betas. You can now actually, if you want, distribute a link to your open beta, and users can just click it, go to a page that looks just like this, and join. And that's it. They can join with just one click. And developers have been able to grow pretty big beta communities this way. You still obviously have the option to create a private closed beta, but you can also now manage that with one option being email addresses, and we've introduced that option earlier this year. So let's see why The Guardian tells us that they're big fans of beta testing. Over the past 6 months, they've tried basically every single feature through beta testing first before rolling it out. On average, they do 3 builds before each production release. And they've said that this really helps them move a lot faster. It provides a safe place for them to try out crazy new stuff without risking their brand. And it also helps them gather a bit of data so that they can take it to stakeholders to make tough decisions. It used to take them over a month to launch new features. Now it's less than a couple weeks. So staged rollouts, this is another way of making sure that your app doesn't release any bugs to new users. You basically just push out your new version, and rather than going to every user, you go to a certain percentage, and you can increase that percentage over time. And then this year at Google I/O, we announced the Cloud Test Lab. And we're trialing this with a small set of developers today. And if you're interested, you can go to the developer console to sign up, and hopefully we'll add you to that beta test soon. So in Google Play, what's going to happen with the Cloud Test Lab is that we're going to send all alpha and beta apps to be tested on a set of real physical devices, and you'll get results back pretty quickly. So this is yet another reason to use alpha and beta if you aren't already doing that, and helps you detect any major obvious issues. And we've heard from some of the developers who are trying this early version, the first thing they want to do after that is they say, well, that was cool, but I want to write some really specific tests and run it on this particular one device that's been really hard for me to track down. And so we're actually going to have a way to do that too. You'll be able to write customized testing and then run it through Android Studio on either virtual or physical devices, specifying the exact set of devices that you want to use. So this is what we've been through today. First, we want you to be able to build a great app and a business on Google Play. And so in the design phase, material design can be easier than ever to use thanks to a whole bunch of new resources. In the development phase, Android Marshmallows brought some serious changes for developers like permissions and doze mode. And so Android Studio and other resources can help you test that out and make sure you have built a high-quality app. And then finally, distributing quality apps is easier than ever, and because Play is offering development-centered tools that help you iterate and test your new apps. Thank you.